Hello, it's a Mighty Marvel Mix. I'm Paul, and for this episode, I thought I would share some of my collecting tips and collecting ways that I go about it. I've been very lucky over the last few years. I've built up a Marvel Legends collection, certainly over the lockdown period where a lot of people were stuck, well, everyone was stuck at home, and I was seeking out to try and boost my collection. I've got a lot of figures. I've got several hundred figures. And I've been very lucky, and I'm in a position where I can get figures that I want because I love the character, or I love the costume, or the particular wave for the builder figure. I'm a bit select in the ones I get, but quite extensive because I love a lot of Marvel stuff, as you can tell. But I've noticed certainly over the last few months that a number of bargains, things that were off the market, are creeping back on the market. And I thought, well, does that work with some of the tips and some of the ways that I collect figures? I'm not an expert in any way. There's people who've been doing this a lot longer than me that are a lot better at it, but I do have a number of ways that I go about it. So we do have a few things I thought I would share that have worked for me, and in terms of picking up some of those figures, because the bargains are out there. So there's three initial figures. So I'm going to talk about some loose figures and getting some sets and the ways I go about it. So first thing I'm going to look at is some really key loose figures I was able to pick up. Three examples I'm going to give is I was after the 80th Marvel 80 years celebration Marvel Legends figure of Captain America, which is based on the Alex Ross art, the Ironman version, same thing, that red and gold suit, and the Baron Zemo, which came out about 2015, which is a fantastic looking figure. So those three. Now, for a long time, they were impossible. The Baron Zemo, I was outbid at about $85, nearly $90 about a year or so ago. And that was too much at that level. For well, that's just too much for that figure. Although I'm lucky enough to be able to buy a lot of figures and have the disposable income to do that, that was outside that budget. So I didn't go for that bid. I thought that was just too much at that stage. So I stopped there. But particular thing with the release of the Walgreens exclusive that was on the way, a few collectors are now looking at thinking, is now the time to sell and cash in when that figure might be at its highest market value before a new one comes out. So I was able to get, and there he is, the Baron Zemo figure with his sword and his Luger pistol, so the full accessories in great condition from a collector off of eBay at $50, which is an incredibly good, I'll stick to dollars rather than pounds, so it's one thing. So about $50. So it's an incredibly good price and really, really worth it. And I think that came about, again, this was about 3 or 4 months ago now, maybe a bit longer. The news of the new Baron Zemo had been released, the more sort of comic book accurate one from a few years ago. So it fitted that. So this came back out. That was, again, looking at a seller that I'd bought from before, that had a great track record, was selling a lot of figures, and had good trader record. And that is my first pro tip. Check the selling record, particularly on eBay, of a seller. Because they may have done 100-200 transactions. They may be done thousands and thousands. But the percentages, I think, is quite key against the number of transactions. That's the way I look at it. If you've done 100 transactions, that's quite a lot. But if you're at 96% transaction success or rating, then that's 4 of those that have gone really bad. And it could be worse. Could be some terrible ones. Now, not everyone who buys is objective and nice about it, and some people don't properly check what they're buying, they don't do the work properly, and they get a bit caught out, and that's not the seller's fault, that's the buyer's fault. And some people are quick to jump on the keyboard and give a bad review. But generally, I use as a barometer a higher level of the selling numbers. How much has a person sold? I look at that more than what's their rating. Because if they've sold 10, 12,000 items and their rating is 96, 97% and above, I think that's reasonable. I think that's a lot, that 100% in there. And then to match that, I look at the actual physical verbal feedback that's been given about that seller, particularly the last 6 months, because that's obviously key bit. What are they trading like now? Because if they were really bad, they sorted themselves out. Is it great? Is it consistent? Or have they got worse and they've actually dropped down, and that's what's happened? So that's the sort of thing I look at with that. So that is, again, I'm not a pro, but that is one of my tips. Check the seller ratings and check that against the amount of actual transactions that that person has made, and what do the comments say. And that's how I was able to pick up that Baron Zemo. That's how I was able to pick up this Captain America. So loose figure, one of the greatest figures ever made, Marvel Legends. And I'm lucky enough to have the boxed figure as well. So I've got a mint in box, brand new version. Now this came out about $50 about 6-7 months ago, which I was lucky enough to be able to afford at that point. So I bought it. I paid $80 for the boxed version, but again, at the time, I was comfortable with that budget for that, so that did work for me. So I kept to that. So, and again, the reasons for that were that I think they've been off the market for ages, or hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And then you had the announcement of the Series 1, the 20th anniversary, which is dropping now. You can see some people have got it out there ready, and mine's on the way next month when I'm filming this. So that version. So again, that's a position. Do some traders think now's the time to cash in, or actually, let me get this sold now because then I've got money that I'm comfortable with that amount because that's what I'm selling at, and then that's done, and then move on from there. Equally, so that's another tip from me. Check the release of similar new or updated figures because that can influence the market price in terms of these figures. And as a good guide, I'd recommend actionfigure411.com as a site to go to check that. So that worked well. Similarly, that worked well for me with the Ironman version as well. Again, I have a box version, brand new mint in box, and I have this sweet loose version which came with every accessory, the whole thing. Fantastic. Looked after by a collector. And that's my next tip. Check what the collector's offering in the description. When I sell, I will tell people, because it's true, that I have my figures stored in bubble wrap, in pet-free, smoke-free house, looked after by a collector. I put a picture of that figure on, not the generic, come from the Hasbro site, so people can actually physically see I have the figure. It's that genuine figure. And they can also see the condition of it. And I'm honest with the condition. If there's a paint chip, I say. So I'm very honest with that. And I set my price accordingly for that as well. And then I think I'm being fair. I'm doing everything from my perspective to be fair to people. So that's the way I work that. So that's my next tip, to do that. So be honest when you're selling, but when you're buying, read that and read what people are telling you about how they've been keeping that figure. And then that gives you a very clear indication. And equally, you can look at what they are selling. If they're selling lots of figures, if they do it all the time, you can probably trust in that case. I'm very cautious, and in fact, I don't buy from social media sites, Facebook. Slight exception with Instagram. If you're actually visiting their site off of their page, that's a bit different. But I never buy via direct. I'm in a lot of Marvel Legends collector groups on Facebook. I never buy from those. I'm sure there's some great ones out there, but I see too many where someone's been ripped off, they paid the money, never even got the figure, or they've not got what they were promised. So I'm very cautious. So that would be my tip. Be very cautious with that. Okay, what am I looking at next? Let's look at some cool box figures. Buying from abroad, that's clearly where I see some bargains as well. And I'm very lucky recently, I'm going to use this as a good example of this, is I was able to secure Mafex Venom. What an incredible figure. So the Mafex Venom figure came from China, which you get good sellers, bad sellers, like a lot of places. But I was very careful to check the ratings with this one and read all the information about the seller. 6 to 9 months ago, there were some issues. Some people were complaining, but they seemed very extreme in their complaints against what everyone else was saying. So I did a lot of research. The last 6 months of this trader was impeccable, no problem at all. I could see the images. It was clearly they had that Mafex. These can go for $600-700. This was $50 on eBay. Came perfectly packed, perfectly looked after. The figure's not in there because it's in my collection, but it was fantastic. Absolutely everything was described as. Very, very pleased with it. The packaging, the shipping time was great. So perfect. So again, if you're buying from abroad, do check their history particularly, and do check their prices, because I did think, well, that's too good to be true. But actually, when I started researching, it seemed there was some extreme examples of people charging a fortune for a Mafex. And the ballpark where I was buying this one was about right. So that looked about okay. We didn't go for the cheapest, to be honest, because that maybe worried me. So within a couple of dollars, I went for that price. So that really worked. So buying from abroad, that's what I would do. Always check the ratings, very much check their trading history, and check whether the image itself is standard bulk image or it looks genuine, like they've actually got that figure. That's what I would do. Okay, some other box sets I want to talk about, a couple of different examples. So the Magneto, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver set, glorious set. Absolutely love this. Now for many years, couldn't get hold of this. This was then going about $120, $130. I saw this at about $80 about 5-6 months ago. So I kept an eye on it. So I added it to my watch list on eBay, which seems to be a very good place to go. And then this popped up at $45. So it's a no-brainer. So absolutely keep an eye on sellers, keep an eye on those things. Save the searches for figures that you want. Maybe they'll come up. So that worked really well, and I'm surprised to see that drop. And I think predominantly because you've got a reissue of this Scarlet Witch, which has just come out now on its own mint on card version, and you've got and you've had a new Magneto, you've had the Age of Apocalypse Magneto, and you've had the Magneto from the House of X-Wave in the two in the last 2 years. So again, can go one of two ways: push the value up, bring the value down. So to get that set, and that was again mint perfect. You can touch about and see inside. The tape is still on the hands. That's perfect. So those bargains are out there. It takes a bit of research, but those bargains are out there. So that is my tip again for that one. Keep an eye on the figures you want. Track them. The bargains are out there. Okay, next box one I'll talk about, and this is the beauty. So this again is the 80th celebration. Look at it, Colossus and Juggernaut set. Now this has been off the market in the UK since almost it came out. Almost impossible to get hold of unless you wanted to pay $200, anywhere around that mark. It's just not been out in the UK. But this weekend just gone, this was in one of my local, say local, about an hour away, local comic shops. And there aren't that many in the UK. Not many places to go and actually get physical figures, see them on the shelves. So this was in my local comic shop for $73. Absolutely, I could not get that off the shelf quick enough to get that set. And this is my other tip for this sort of thing. Keep an eye on your local comic shops, or keep an eye on people where you go to and you know you can get these things. Keep a look on what they're selling and check the whole shop. So this was right there at the front. They have two stories in the shop. Upstairs is ground floor when you walk in is collectibles, toys, helmets, statues, that type of thing. And downstairs is comic books, graphic novels. Now in the downstairs section, they have sales and they move some of their figures down into those sales. So whilst that wasn't there, the same weekend, my son picked up for $11. He picked up the Zhao Jing from the Shang-Chi wave figure, which is a great figure. He picked that up for $11. So an absolute bargain there. So check your local shop, talk to them, because they're nice people generally. You know, they love it. They same as us. They love it. Talk to those people. See what they've got. If you've got any more think coming in. This I never expected to see back on the shelf again. And they weren't aware they were getting it in. They just came in with a backlog of stock. But check all around the shop. Check the other shelves. Because I know my boys do it. They'll pick some of that under their arm. They want it. And then in a minute they see something else they want. So they put it back down and they get that. And they move around the stock. And not always are the assistants who work in the shops so quick at picking things back and putting them back in there. You know, Marvel, DC, whatever it might be areas. So that'd be my other tip. Keep an eye on your local shops. Talk to them, see what stock they think they might be getting in. But keep an eye on the whole shop and check the whole place. Keep an eye on the bargains. So I've been very lucky to secure some of these figures. But I'd like to know what your tips are. What are your bargains? How do you go about it? Let me know. Stick it in the comments. What bargains have you got? Or how do you go about? What's your tips? Let's get the community talking. What are your tips? And while you're there, obviously like, share and subscribe and do all that. That'd be great. And that's it. I'm off to go and stare at all these bargains now. Bye for now.